Let's get started. Peer-to-peer tech. As time goes by, I'm starting to be very thankful for for companies like Coinbase and so on, for making it so difficult to work with them. That is in every field. Now we can talk a little bit about what we can do peer-to-peer, but in every field of the peer-to-peer is becoming easier. And yeah, I have to be very thankful to them and regulators. But with this introduction, I want to ask you, like, how do you see peer-to-peer tech in 2024?
Yeah, I can answer that. I think, well, there are several proposals that I see that are quite interesting. I see it becoming more private. I see it becoming simpler in the sense of not needing to do so many transactions on chain. And so for it becoming lightweight, quicker, more private. And I think if we could see that all together, adding more liquidity, that would be ideal, of course. I think there's several projects interesting in that regard, but I'll say that.
But now you're talking about peer-to-peer exchanging Bitcoin, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say still difficult in 2024.
UX-wise or what?
UX, people, I mean users, etc. There's like, we did the research at HODL, I think a couple of years ago. It was funny. We've asked on the Twitter, like, how many of you, our followers, like HODL, and there's like 95% of the respondents, which was like a pretty huge number, said we all like HODL. And then we asked how many of you actually use HODL, and that was like 2%, something like that. So there's a lot of cheerleaders, which is great, and like we're happy for that. But the amount of users is still pretty much low for peer-to-peer tech, and I would say, like, in my opinion, at least in Bitcoin, I'm afraid that peer-to-peer and non-custodial tech will never be at the size of custodial and centralized tech, because it's hard to compare. And again, not trying to share an unpopular opinion, but if we will compare it with Ethereum, they have Uniswap, which is like, it's built on Ethereum. Obviously, that's a scam or whatever. But well, Uniswap is kind of where I would like to see the Bitcoin alternative version, like purely built on Bitcoin. And I don't think that this craziness which is happening now with L2 solutions on top of Bitcoin will solve that. So I'm a pretty much on-chain maximalist. To some extent, I like Lightning, but it's still like, for me and I know for many, building on top of Lightning peer-to-peer tech is very, very hard. Like, not many people say that out loud, because again, it's a very unpopular opinion. But people who actually are successful, or people treat them as a successful Lightning entrepreneurs, they say, like, if I would know that they will be that hard, I probably would do something else. So, yeah.
But is it hard because it's a hard tech, so to develop in peer-to-peer is hard, or is it frustrating, or is it both?
Both. It's hard and it's frustrating as a result. So, I think it's both. You know, it's really hard to build like non-custodial peer-to-peer tech on top of Lightning. Really, really hard. I mean, if it's a wallet, it's a one thing, right? But if we're talking about trading, lending, doing other stuff, it's really hard. There's a lot of like startups or companies or ideas who say, we're gonna do that, but I'm gonna believe it when I'm gonna see it.
Waka?
Yeah, in general, I'd like to echo what Max said. It's a reality we see on the ground. Like, so interestingly, recently, I think a week or two ago, we're trying to onboard a couple of folks that were getting into the Bitcoin space, and the idea was, so their use case is, without getting too much into detail, the priority for them was getting no KYC Bitcoin and making sure that they have services that are no KYC, both on the on-ramp and off-ramp. side. So for us, it was like, okay, cool. Like we're in 2024. You know, it should be a lot of services for us to be able to use. But then, like 30 minutes ended up being 5 hours of going through different services, realizing that one, the criteria, they're Nigerian. Two, they want no KYC. Three, they're operating with accounts that, because they're Nigerian, are in different parts of the world, like having a UK account at like a small fintech, which doesn't have the right type of MasterCard to allow them to actually buy on exchanges that allow for, you know, P2P buying Bitcoin through all of that. And then on the Nigerian side, they have accounts that are being shadow banned. So they have like limits on how much they could actually spend. And on top of that, that doesn't interplay with a lot of even P2P tech that's like, you know, hodl, for example, because the funny thing is, even if you do have some of the services that some of the parties allow for, like maybe TransferWise or things like that, because you're in Nigeria, they don't actually trade with you. So you get into the chat and then halfway through the convo, they're like, oh, it's a Nigerian wise account, we don't operate with that. So just to kind of shorten the whole idea there, it's still very, very difficult to get no KYC Bitcoin in 2024, both on the on-ramp and on the off-ramp side. The good thing is it's not all doom and gloom. I would say, I think the reason why I still have hope is because there are a lot of entrepreneurs that are building specifically for that use case on the ground, especially here in Africa, and it's a mishmash of like a couple of things. One, getting liquidity into a lot more of the P2P side on the no KYC level. So previously, a lot of that was locked up into Binance. The good thing, which I mean, technically is a good thing for average people, is that Binance is essentially being kicked out of Nigeria, which allows for a lot of the alternatives to actually come up and take up a lot of that extant demand essentially for that Bitcoin. But then the benefit and the opportunity are kind of weirdly linked in the sense that because it's so difficult to get it right, it presents an opportunity for people that are building with that in mind and trying to solve for that on the ground. But because that is the opportunity in and of itself, we're now in a quagmire where people still find it even more difficult than it used to be when Binance was operating than now that it's no longer operating. So I'd say it's really effing hard, but there's definitely hope because people recognize that it is that hard. So it's not a case of like all the maxis are in charge of building the products and like deceiving themselves. It's actually people who are trying to onboard people like we were previously trying to do like 2 weeks ago. We still haven't succeeded in that. So once we do, I guess that's when 2024 is like looking good for people trying to get into P2P tech.
I think peer-to-peer is being reborn in last couple of years because we saw some big websites like local Bitcoins shutting down, and I had the feeling like, okay, they force too much peer-to-peer. They don't allow, for example, hodl to be in the United States or and stuff like that. So, and you think, okay, it's dying peer-to-peer. But last couple of years is I've seen new companies or new projects of peer-to-peer, and yes, it's more difficult to people to get peer-to-peer because a lot of people think they are being scammed because it's like the Wild West peer-to-peer. But when they started to use it, they know that it's not. They can be scammed using the exchange too, or I don't know. I think it's slow. It's a slow process of explain people that they are kind of there are risks, of course, but I think if we do the things right, we can give some security to the people that they are not being scammed. I think we are growing with LMP2P bot slowly, but we keep growing the amount of people using the bot. Yes, it's nothing compared with big players, but for me it's important that most of the people that use the Telegram bot are people that live under authoritarian regimes, so they don't have much options, and that is the good thing that they can have these options that we are building. Like they are like a little bit like underground because we don't do any advertising. Everything's organically. So I think maybe in the first world this is never gonna be something important, but I think it's a good option for people that need it the most.
Before you mentioned Uniswap and how big it is, no? And the volumes they do is crazy. But in Uniswap, there is no fiat. No? So all the volumes they move is shitcoin, shitcoin, stablecoin, and so on and so forth. I think that the problem is to jump in the, let's call it the crypto world, no? To swap whatever you have to crypto, USDT, it can be okay. And then when you speak the crypto language, then you can jump wherever you want. And this makes me think that, and for what also Negrunch was saying now, is like, the problem of peer-to-peer maybe is regulators, no? Because they are making it extremely hard year by year to operate peer-to-peer. And after, for example, things that happened this year with the Samurai team being arrested, some companies, some even more companies left the States. And people is afraid, not only developers, but also users. So some of them they don't even know if they will be able to sell afterwards the Bitcoin they are buying in peer-to-peer tech platform. And then they say, okay, fuck it, or I don't buy Bitcoin, or I will do it in Kraken or whatever it is, just to be safe. So what do you think is, or what should we do with regulators, or maybe you think that no, that's not the case?
So this is an interesting one, because we've seen, so I'll just give a use case with Nigeria, for example. So from 2021, the central bank essentially issued a circular saying that anyone who was engaged in whether it's P2P or whether it's no KYC P2P or KYC P2P for Bitcoin, you can't tie transactions directly to Bitcoin transactions essentially, so within the invoice itself or things like that. So that required everyone to essentially just break off of the banking institutions and then move into P2P, which fast forward to 2024, that was actually the best thing that happened to Nigeria, because what it meant was we now had previously underground P2P market that just bubbled up into the standard for how you just buy Bitcoin typically. Whether you're actually using exchanges or not, they actually do rely on P2P as the backend and the core infrastructure. So that's on that side in terms of how negative regulation can positively affect the ecosystem. And then last year actually was when they reversed that ban, and now you're actually allowed to do it, which kind of proves the point. Like they tried to stop it and then realized that they only enable the environment to kind of thrive, but to become the standard, and then they reverted on that. I think it's not exactly as straightforward to think of the government allowing for P2P to exist in like an encouraging way. So specifically talking about, the government will likely never make it a priority for themselves to provide regulation that would promote P2P, especially on the no KYC side, because again, governments, especially one in Nigeria, for example, where Bitcoin, USDT all technically compete for the same demand as the local currency, is not in their interest to actually allow for that ecosystem to thrive vis-a-vis the actual currency itself, which is why they got into the whole Binance issue. So I think what will be useful or will benefit the ecosystem is to have, if there is regulation, consistent regulation across the board. So not treating no KYC P2P different from general, just P2P in general, that's KYC, or just the Bitcoin ecosystem in general. So if you're trying to regulate it as, let's say, a commodity, which we don't pay taxes on in Nigeria, and then stick to that. And the other one, I think, is conflicting regulation between regulators themselves, because the CBN regulates the majority of the Bitcoin space in Nigeria, for example, so our central bank. But at the same time, we have the SEC in Nigeria who also wants to regulate Bitcoin as a security. And then we also have our commodities regulators that want to control it as like a commodity in general. And then in between that, we also have our other government agencies that are operating in like the security space who try to kind of provide guardrails to make sure that there is KYC regardless of what you're operating. So I think conflicting regulation is a huge issue for us. We just need them to understand who should regulate what. And then if they are regulating, it should just be consistent. That's all I'll say. So don't expect them to give regulation that's going to help the space. It should just be regulation that would not hamper the space, essentially.
It feels like in the first world we are trying to give too much pleasure to regulators, trying to follow what they great ideas. Meanwhile, in places like Argentina, no, where everything, I mean, now we have 8 months of Milei and everybody's still thinking like, okay, let's see how this is gonna go. But before, it has been like a broken state for I don't know how many years, and broken economy, broken money. And in those countries, people is like, no, I'm not gonna give any pleasure to these people because first of all, I wanna put food in my mouth and I don't give a damn. But yeah, I feel that maybe we should. I know that what I'm going to say now is very cool for a conference, but it's not reality. But maybe we should just don't give a damn. And but yeah, the problem is that then then maybe we will stick to this low volume. So we can do that. That's not a utopia. Don't give a damn. But we will stick to low volume, no institutional peer-to-peer markets or highly regulated peer-to-peer markets. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, you have two routes. You can lobby, you can try to change regulation, you can ask for clarity, but we know that that road, it's a very difficult one, and perhaps, you know, most of us here don't have the tools and are not equipped enough to have that fight. And then the other route is just to, you know, become more niche, go the decentralized way. You know, this is just speech. Let's be it so that there's no single point of failure, that is not centralized. And but yeah, I mean, I think asking and expecting regulators to have that clarity. I think what we should ask for is just to have, you know, less regulation. Obviously, like we, you know, if regulation is meant to protect user, investor, client, then let's have less friction. Obviously, that's what we should be asking, and that's, you know, what we need on the developer side, but also on the user side.
I respect the people that wants to try to make a good regulation, or they think there is a good regulation, but I don't believe it. And I think, fuck them. And that's why we're working tools like Monstro, which is the idea is like people do whatever they want. So it's going to be really hard to shut down and easy to set up. So they can fight the government. Will spend too much resources finding these servers, and I hope they finally give up and allows people to do peer-to-peer.
Max, I know
They
that
want. Narrator, they want.
You might have some, like a more understanding of the institutional side, maybe not. Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, it's Leo already told. Like I basically agree with him. Like when you scale up, the regulation just coming in. If you can stay niche and hope that they will not like recognize you, or you can be flexible. Let's say if one market is having bad regulation, you can always scale to another market. You know, you can play in that way. But it's basically the question of size. If you're not big enough, probably you're somewhere on the radar. For the question is not how or what it is going to happen. The question is when. So building the tools like on top of Nostr or something else more like decentralized is very good. But we need to understand that it's still niche, and I think it's going to be like niche for the next 5 to 10 years. And in terms of institutional adoption, well, it's like institutions basically equal KYC, so that's, and regulation. So there's no other options in there, you know.
Okay, I think that aside of fuck them from Negrunch and it's not all doom and gloom from Abu Bakr. A bit depressing, no?
No, it's not depressing. It's actually pretty much realistic. I mean, we can, you know, sit here and say how it's amazing, blah blah blah. It's great. It is great. It is amazing. But what I'm trying to deliver, the message I'm trying to deliver is, your support is important. It's really great, but it's not only about support. Like, try to use these services. It's not necessary it has to be hodl. It's not necessary it has to be trading or lending. Try to use these services, you know. Even like start small, you know. Everyone is using Wallet of Satoshi, which is great, but it's custodial, right? Learn learn Zeus, learn Phoenix, you know, try to educate yourself. This is what I'm saying, you know, again, going to the conference, cheering in Twitter, in Noster, like these are all amazing services, great. We appreciate that, but we actually appreciate when you're using us, giving us feedback, and then we can improve and build better tools for you. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, that was quite hopeful. So I want to extend this, where is the hope, no? Or where is the shining future that you envision for peer-to-peer? What wakes you up in the morning and say, yeah, I should keep on working on that? Where do you see the hope or the good future for peer-to-peer?
I mean, I'll just say one thing. So there's essentially a bifurcation in the ecosystem for users. So there's a side that enjoy basically all the benefits of having Bitcoin talking with traditional rails. But the problem is all of that is in the KYC realm. Like once you've KYC'd, you have access to pretty much doing anything with Bitcoin, both traditional and non-traditional. But then the main problem is everyone else that's looking for the no KYC, which I think should be at the bedrock, because without that, rights essentially don't exist in that avenue, as well as censure. So essentially we're going to have the same old fiat system, but with a different narrative of Bitcoin. So I think in terms of the future, it will only be bright if the priority still remains that people should focus on having no KYC P2P as the default for most volume, if not all volume, and kind of the default entryway and making sure that UX is not as convoluted as it is right now. Or if we keep in the same light and things keep going the same way they're going, we're just going to end up having fully KYC Bitcoin that's held by institutions that we keep saying we're trying to disrupt and we're trying to change the world with. So it's up to us really and folks that are building. It's either you want a reality that maintains all the freedoms and the benefits that we claim Bitcoin has, which is only through the P2P no KYC, or you decide to delude yourselves and get into the fully authoritarian KYC route. So I guess that's what I'll say.
Yeah, for me, I mean, in terms of hope, I'm quite hopeful. I think, so, you know, for peer-to-peer, there's definitely a niche. I think whatever percentage it'll be, it'll never, I don't think it'll take up the whole market, but, you know, the niche will always be there, and we'll be there and ready for when there's issues, with all the centralized exchanges, when there's censorship, when there's, you know, not being able to withdraw your funds or late withdrawal, whatever. But I see a lot of projects, a lot of proposals, improving UX, improving liquidity. So I'm quite hopeful with that. I think there's a long way to go. I think we're, you know, just started, but I'm quite hopeful of the future for peer-to-peer.
In my case, I think the working with the Telegram bot makes me to be really close to the users.
Careful now, with Telegram. Careful now.
You are really close to the user because they are always chatting, and there is a lot of communities. They connect. They always writing, and I think they collaborate. They contribute a lot just using the tool because they're giving feedback anytime, and we're improving every time with their what they say. And this is for me is very important because I also see that most of the people that use the bot use, for example, living in Cuba, and they, for example, told me like they can use Tor. So this is really useful because when we're working on Monstro, we will allow use Tor, but it's optional because in Cuba it's impossible because the internet is really slow. So we have good feedback from people that have different realities. So all this is for me is very interesting. So I like kind of addicted of this. I want to keep working on this, improving and doing this kind of stuff because I just see how they're using it every day. So.
Yeah, I have a last commentary I want to tell, and maybe you want to comment on that, and maybe we can open for some questions. But it's crazy when you think about it, what we are talking here. It's if somebody would come from the past or even from another planet and would be listening to us, it makes no sense what we're talking, because peer-to-peer is basically me talking with Max and say, hey, can I get your bracelet? and say, no, okay, something else. And maybe I'm staying, well, okay, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 euro. At some point you say, okay, good. So we just agreed on privately, peer-to-peer, on something. And what is crazy is that, okay, we're having, we want to have more communication, so we're scaling that and using the technologies of information we have. But it's crazy that it's basically this what we're doing. And this is what they are not allowing us. Because of whatever they think it's the right way of doing. In Spain, for example, you cannot pay more than 1,000 euro cash. So they force you to use electronic ways so they can control you. We should, I completely support what Max said. It's like, we have to understand that it makes no sense what is happening, and we have to use the tools. So it's on us. I think that the biggest hope is us. And then we should remember this and use the tools. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
That is spot on.
Yeah. So we have a few minutes for questions peer-to-peer, but probably you have your questions on that. Any question? If not, we will continue. Peer-to-peer questions?
So I guess this question is maybe the million-dollar question, and probably what you guys are all working on. I mean, I use the tools. I use HODL, BISC, RoboSats. I've used them all, and I still do, and I love it. I think that's Bitcoin. That's what it's all about. And I mean, how do we get more people using them? How do we get people using these tools? Is it convenience? Are the centralized exchanges just that good, and they make it so easy that people are just going to stick to that?
UX.
Yeah, agree. UX and more maybe like finally adopting, like in HODL we only have on-chain, which is kind of cool and great, but when the mempool fees are like hitting up the roof, then it's kind of not very convenient. So definitely applying, like trying to apply Lightning or maybe Liquid to some extent. And that definitely helps as well. But yeah, I agree with Leo. UX is a king. It's nothing beats that.
I want to add two things, because I have to speak with a lot of people that want to pay for services or things in Bitcoin and they don't have it. And it gets interesting when you speak with them and see the problems they face. And I believe there is needed two more things, because UX is always what you always say in every talk about peer-to-peer. UX, we need better UX, which is funny because you are working on it. So okay, but I don't think, because UX is quite good already. I think we have to fight, first of all, fear. That's why I like to remind people that this is what this shouldn't be happening. And second, I believe that we need like a guerrilla of people just creating information of how the fiat payment systems work. Because what I see is that I see people taking trades in Lightning peer-to-peer bot, in RoboSat and so on, and what they don't understand is how their bank works. And they have a lot of problems. No, but what is SEPA Instant? It's incredible. Maybe we're living in a bubble. Well, for sure we're living in a bubble. But we understand a little bit more than normies how the fiat system works. And people doesn't know how, they don't understand why the payment is not arriving fast, their fiat payment. They don't understand this kind of thing. So I believe that we need, like, not only the link between fiat and Bitcoin, but we need a whole explanation of the fiat world, because people doesn't understand and is very afraid. The moment they start buying or selling, they get lost. Something breaks in the middle, and then they don't want to touch it anymore. They accept they lost the money and they leave. So I believe this. A lot of more information on the fiat side.
I agree. And I'll add to that, because, for example, one issue with liquidity is not just the liquidity itself, but it's a self-fulfilling thing, as to say. So the moment there's some liquidity, people are bound to come back and create more liquidity. So, for example, in BISC, there used to be no market for Brazil, right? The moment there was a bounty created, and then some people started making offers for that bounty, then since then, for years now, there's been liquidity. Because the moment people go once and there's nothing, they never go back. But they go once and there's access to liquidity, then they come back. And then It's just become more and more and more. So there's definitely the education side of things, like, and people being aware that if they create market, they're contributing, and it just takes a very few people, just few people having a few offers up every single day, and then that just catches on. And then obviously UX and what else? I was going to say something else. I think that's it.
And also people should remember that they can also place offers.
Yeah.
Not just take them.
Yeah.
Because I hear a lot of complaints. No, but there is no liquidity in here.
Exactly.
Place your offer.
Exactly.
Somebody will take it.
Yeah.
You know what we need is incentives for people to promote. What happens if you have the best peer-to-peer platform in the world, but it's just you? If you put the offer, the platform, nobody's going to use it. You need to make the people know about this platform. And maybe you talk with some people, and some people start to use it, but the world is really big. But it's not going to be used in too much places. It's going to take too long, or you have to spend a lot of money in advertising. But if you do an incentive, and I'm thinking on this because we are growing on Brazil, and you know what I did for that? Nothing. I just create the communities and put incentives 1/3 of the fees of the bot. It goes to the creator. So someone in Brazil created a community and started to promote it. I didn't do anything. So now Brazil is the country with more movement, and they're moving like 1 Bitcoin using Lightning Network monthly. So this guy gets 0.3% of that Bitcoin. And this is slow, but I think it works. So the same idea, I want to do it with Monstro, but I'm not going to take anything. It's open source, so I will say, okay, you put your Monstro, and you're going to get everything on the fees. And you can do it in Brazil, for example. And another guy is going to do the same, and they're going to fight each other for the people. And I think they're going to talk about it, and they will make the people create orders there. So if you create some kind of incentive, local incentive, they will talk about it in different regions.
Yeah. Make affiliate links great again.
Yeah. But also the incentive. There's no incentive for people to go out there and talk about it. I mean, the CEO of Telegram just got arrested yesterday. So, I mean, any user who's not, very educated, he'll just stay out of it. I mean, maybe.
But
I don't
maybe
know.
you can delegate
It's
risk.
definitely not
Like,
helping.
on Hodl, for example, you can get affiliate links since, I don't know,
Yeah.
since I know it. And maybe, you're not a manager of the bot, so it's not such a big percentage, but you delegate the risk. It's like, no, I just did an affiliate link.
Like Monstro, I'm not going to be related, because you can create your own Monstro in your region, and I don't know. I'm not responsible. I did the software, but you did it. I'm not getting any money for that. So I think something like that can work.
Are we good? Or any other question? Maybe last question? Any last commentary to close?
I mean, I would say this about UX, just to clarify. You can either design a very, very good platform with good UX, but in isolation. I think you have to consider UX as an end-to-end thing. So you're plugging into an existing ecosystem with people actually using services in and out. Like, no one is just using Hodl. They're using Hodl, a bank account most likely, or maybe a wallet. So it's either you focus on making UX that complicates the entire process of getting your money from point A to the exchange and then out of the exchange, or you make it a lot easier. So when people say UX, like Max always does, yes, like it's not just the platform itself, it's how it plugs into the ecosystem that actually makes it thrive, or just makes things even more complicated. So I just wanted to clarify that.
So I agree with you, Max. Finally. So thank you very much. It was a great talk, and thank you, guys.